Climate change and biodiversity loss are two of the most pressing challenges of our time. These crises cannot be solved without a focus on tropical deforestation. Luckily, the movement to end deforestation across the world is gathering momentum. But to prevent permanent and irreparable damage to our rainforests and climate, we need to act even faster. The production of commodities such as palm oil, beef, soy, cocoa, paper, and pulp is linked to the majority of tropical deforestation around the world. But at the same time, these commodities provide a livelihood to more than 1.6 billion people, food security to many more, and support the economies of many producer countries. What is needed is a collective action towards a balance between critical commodity supply and the impact on our forests. We need a global system of sustainable trade, which will open new opportunities that will result in a positive relationship with our forests. And to achieve that, we need collective action now. If we can ensure that all actors from producer and consumer countries have a voice and a platform to have their say in the decision-making process, feeding directly into government-to-government dialogues, we can effect the change needed. This is no small task, but dialogue can help steer us to unlocking and implementing the right policies, principles, and financial instruments that together can end tropical deforestation caused by commodity supply chains and help in the fight against climate change, while supporting sustainable development for all. This is a unique and potentially game-changing opportunity. We need all voices to provide strategic guidance and insights to accelerate the transition to greener international supply chains. Now is the time. We have the chance to do something truly transformational. With COP26 only 10 months away, we need to seize this moment, reset the balance, and transition to a sustainable future.
Hello and welcome to the launch of the COP26 Forest, Agriculture and Commodity Trade Dialogue, FACT for short. My name is Julia Bradbury and I'm delighted to be your host for this event. I've been presenting television programmes that bring nature and beautiful landscapes and forests into people's living rooms from the UK and around the world for the past 25 years. I'm passionate about protecting our planet and finding solutions for a better future. Throughout my career, I've championed the natural world, and I believe now more than ever that we have to put nature, biodiversity, and human health first. We can do that by collaborating and sharing our knowledge. We must work with nature and learn from its marvelous complexities to fulfill these ambitious but vital plans to transform our food systems so that they work for everyone. We are in a climate emergency, and we must all take urgent action. We need to protect each other and the planet, which is our most valuable, precious resource, our only resource. Thank you so much for joining us from around the world. We'll be hearing all sorts of exciting ideas and thoughts, and we'll hear from ministers from around the globe, those who are stewards of our forests that are such a special and important asset for the whole world that we all benefit from, and also ministers from countries who are buyers of commodities that are linked to their continued loss. We're going to show you some powerful videos that demonstrate the transformative change that's already taking place. And we'll hear from Indigenous populations in forest lands, NGOs, and the private sector in a panel discussion that's going to be hosted by the Tropical Forest Alliance. I'm sure they'll all challenge and inspire us as we launch this forest, agriculture, and commodity trade dialogue. So now I'm delighted to welcome the UK COP President Designate, the Right Honourable Alok Sharma, to start us off.
Greetings everyone and welcome to the Forest, Agriculture and Commodity Trade Dialogue. Thank you so much for joining us today. Friends, as COP President, I have one very clear aim, and that's to put the world on track to make the Paris Agreement a reality. And it's evident that we cannot achieve that unless we deal with the vital issue of deforestation. Around the world, we are seeing forests depleted and biodiversity vanishing at a terrifying rate, driven by the global trade in agriculture commodities. Demand for such goods is putting immense pressure on the Earth's forests, on which more than 1.5 billion people depend on their livelihoods, and they're also having a devastating effect on the planet. Land use is responsible for 23% of total global emissions. As I say, if we continue on this course, our Paris Agreement targets will slip out of reach, and that will have devastating effects for people and, of course, for nature. We'd have temperatures soaring, seas rising, storms intensifying. The Dasgupta review on the economics of biodiversity, published today, is very clear that our treatment of nature presents grave risks to our economies, livelihoods, and well-being. So we must act now to turn the tide. But we must do so in a manner that supports those who depend on the forests, prioritizing their economic interests and development. And ultimately, we all have a responsibility to act. The UK is taking action. We're contributing £3 billion over the next 5 years to support nature. But what is vital to tackling this problem is cooperation across borders and between sectors. Working together, we can mobilize investment and grow markets for sustainable production. Markets that support both the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. To achieve this, producer and consumer countries must come together in the spirit of mutual respect, dialogue and collaboration, working hand in hand with business and civil society. And that is what we are doing today. We hope that these dialogues will establish long-term plans and result in practical, ambitious measures, which of course are then implemented by governments, business and civil society. Today is just the start of that conversation. And I look forward to working with all of you ahead of COP26 and of course beyond, to reform this vital trade, to protect livelihoods and to help to put the Paris Agreement into practice. Thank you.
Thanks there to the Right Honourable Alex Sharma, letting us know about the ambition and the scale of COP26 and detailing the contribution that this dialogue will make. Dialogue that will bring consumer and producer countries together in the spirit of mutual respect. And the FACT dialogue will do just that through a variety of ways, including ongoing closed-door sessions with government representatives and in the multi-stakeholder dialogues hosted by the Tropical Forest Alliance, driving for sustainable trade, supply chains and livelihoods. Now, many countries are already working hard on this agenda and supporting this dialogue. So let's hear from a few of them.
We know that reducing deforestation while supporting economic growth and raising agricultural productivity is possible. Over the last decade, valuable progress has been made. Many of you here today have taken actions that have demonstrated the possibilities, and we look forward to hearing more about that. But we need to scale up. And to do that requires genuine partnership of business, civil society and governments, north, south, east, west, consumer countries, producer countries, developed and developing. We believe such a dialogue has been missing, and we're committed to working together to find a joint way forward. It must be a dialogue based on mutual respect and recognition of all the legitimate interests at stake, and it must lead to meaningful action.
I am Teresa Cristina, Minister of Agriculture of Brazil. As an agri-food powerhouse, Brazil is ready to work with all partners in favor of sustainable land use in all ecosystem and fair agricultural trade.
As Minister of Climate and Environment in Norway, I am pleased to support this collaborative effort to halt commodity-driven deforestation. This will take sustained global leadership from countries and companies alike. We will continue to support this effort financially, technically and politically.
En ma qualité de ministre de l'Environnement et Développement durable de la République démocratique du Congo, je vous confirme l'engagement de mon pays à soutenir la production et le commerce durable des produits de base dans le respect de la protection de nos forêts.
We are entering a critical phase for people, for nature and for climate. But if we work together in partnership, we can make agricultural supply chains more sustainable, preserve the forest and improve lives and livelihoods of smallholder farmers, achieving both the SDGs and the Paris goals in one go.
As German Environment Minister, I fully support this dialogue, deforestation-free agricultural supply chains, protect valuable forest ecosystems, and bolster climate action. And that is why Germany has developed corresponding guidelines.
To ensure sustainable land use and commodity trade, we have taken national and regional steps by strengthening our national policy to enforce sustainable forest management and championing ECO's position in the region to control deforestation and biodiversity loss.
Como Ministro de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible de la República Argentina, deseo expresar nuestro compromiso fraternal con la comunidad internacional para avanzar en materia agrícola con el fin de avanzar en el uso y prácticas sostenibles de la tierra, la conservación de los bienes naturales y el comercio justo.
As a Minister of Livestock, Agriculture and Fisheries of Uruguay, as a food exporter country, I express our strong commitment with a sustainable, environmentally friendly and regenerative use of land and water.
As Minister of MAF Japan, we are developing a new strategy to achieve sustainable food systems. In this strategy, I plan to promote sustainable sourcing.
Desde el Ministerio del Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible queremos manifestar nuestro absoluto compromiso de velar por la conservación, la recuperación y el uso responsable de nuestros recursos naturales.
There are many families in low-income countries that depend on the good state of the land, of the soil, and responding to the challenge, ensuring restoration and a proper management of the land does not depend only of the local agendas. There are many interconnections with global agendas, and we need to ensure that the answer and the awareness is there. For instance, let's try to ensure that there is not imported deforestation when being consuming goods that up in the chain come from deforested practices. This is something that we need to be aware. This is something we need to cooperate in the time to come.
En el marco de las prioridades sectoriales, el Perú está comprometido con el uso sostenible de la tierra y de los recursos naturales, promoviendo un enfoque de producción sostenible que evite la deforestación.
As Minister of the Environment in Italy, I confirm my renewed commitment to afforestation and to developing forest resources as an asset to global biodiversity, both in the framework of Italy's COP26 partnership with the UK and of our presidency of the G20. We have a duty to protect the immense value of forests and to ensure that they are not endangered by global trade.
Non li aggredisca.
La dégradation des terres empêche la croissance agricole, elle accroît la pauvreté, elle alimente les tensions sociales et sécuritaire tout en menaçant la biodiversité. Au Congo, nous luttons chaque jour contre la déforestation et pour l'usage d'alternatives aux pesticides.
As Minister of State for the Biodiversity of France, I commit every day to combating imported deforestation. For this purpose, we are joining the United Kingdom in this dialogue to reiterate the importance of preserving tropical forests through sustainable supply chains, especially in provision of major climate and biodiversity conferences to be held this year.
In the UK, we're replacing our own land use subsidies with a new system that rewards good stewardship of the land and leaves space for wild species. And if we can persuade others to do the same and to work with us, we can flip the market in favour of sustainability. I look forward to reconnecting with you as soon as we can to continue to discuss actions that we can take to grow markets for sustainable trade, support lives and livelihoods, and protect forests. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of the ministers there. It's very uplifting to see such global support and ambition to work together on this. And now we get to hear from a few ministers in more detail about the challenges and opportunities of reducing commodity-driven deforestation in their own countries. So I'm going to be joined by ministers from Colombia, Liberia, South Korea, and the European Union for a virtual panel discussion. I'd like to welcome Minister Rodolfo Sea, Minister of Agriculture for Colombia, Minister Janine Cooper, who is the Minister of Agriculture for Liberia, Dr. Chong-Ho Park, the Minister of Korea Forest Service, and Mr. Virginios Sinkevirkios, who is the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries. Right, starting with Colombia, Minister Zaya, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned from supporting sustainable development while also protecting forests, and what have been some of the biggest challenges?
Colombia fue el primer país de la región en hacer parte del Tropical Forest Alliance, TFA. En el año 2017 hace parte igualmente del Foro de Bosques de Nueva York de 2014. A la fecha ha firmado 4 acuerdos de cero deforestación para las cadenas productivas de palma, cacao, ganadería de carne y lácteos, que se han constituido en plataformas de trabajo público, privadas, y permite al gobierno dialogar con productores, empresas de transformación, comercializadores, gremios de la producción, organizaciones de la sociedad civil, academia y centros de investigación y pensamiento, en torno a un objetivo común: obtener productos básicos y terminados libres de deforestación. Tenemos importantes retos. Uno de ellos es culminar el diseño y puesta en marcha de los mecanismos de monitoreo y seguimiento de los acuerdos para validar el cumplimiento de los compromisos y verificar que las empresas están progresivamente garantizando que sus cadenas de suministro no tienen huella de deforestación. Además, desarrollar e impulsar uno o varios sellos o etiquetas de cadenas cero deforestación que identifiquen los productos ante el consumidor y proporcionar productos de calidad a los mercados nacionales e internacionales. Y finalmente, posicionar los acuerdos cero deforestación como herramientas reconocidas internacionalmente para procesos de debida diligencia para exportaciones a la Unión Europea y al Reino Unido, de acuerdo con las propuestas de legislación existentes.
Thank you, Minister Zaya, for those insightful reflections on Colombia's zero deforestation agreements. Now I'd like to bring in Minister Park from the Korea Forest Service to comment on the key lessons learned and also the biggest challenges.
There are three major transitions my country has experienced for the last half century. First, an industrial shift from a poor country to high-tech country. Second, with our successful forest rehabilitation, we pursue sustainable forest management today. Third, Korea, once as an international aid recipient, now contributes to the international community. Korea contributes more than $3 billion to ODA every year and planned to double our contribution by 2030. We also increased the volume of projects in the forestry and agriculture sector. Let me share a key lesson learned from our forest rehabilitation activities. First, community programs should be included to improve livelihood and to create alternative income opportunities. Second, it is essential to provide capacity building and training program for women, children, and the youth. Third, institutional cooperation should be formulated for concerted effort between like-minded countries. This is why we established the Asia Forest Cooperation Organization, officially launched in 2018. We have also joined, as an only non-European country, the Central African Forest Initiative, which aims to restore tropical rainforest in the Congo Basin. Nevertheless, due to global warming, huge wildfires and the new forest disease have surged recently. And the pandemic has imposed the biggest challenge in international cooperation.
Thank you, Minister Park. Good to hear about Korea's work and ambition in this area. Minister Cooper, please can you share with us the West African perspective on the biggest challenges?
Thank you very much, Julia. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. First, let me preface my answer by saying that Liberia is one of 9 high forest cover countries in the world. And so our situation vis-a-vis palm oil, oil palm industry is maybe different than many of the other members of the different oil palm platforms. We have less than 1% of our forest is devoted to oil palm. So one of the challenges for us has been to tell our story and have it heard. Our production of oil palm is not detrimental to the environment and it is very necessary to our agricultural development and our economic well-being.
Thank you, Janine. Interesting reflections there on the role that Liberia can play in mitigating climate change. And now, Mr. Sinkevirkias, you are the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries. What challenges has the EU faced during its work on reducing deforestation and promoting sustainable trade, and what lessons learned?
So thank you for your question. Deforestation and forest degradation are responsible for around 15% of greenhouse gas emissions and a direct factor of global climate change. Since the early 2000s, the EU has put in place a number of specific tools to fight illegal logging and associated trade. We prohibited the placing of illegally harvested timber on the EU market, and we pioneered due diligence approaches to tackle deforestation. With this, the EU has played a leading global role, inspiring similar actions in other countries. Yet, all this has not been enough to address the challenge of deforestation, and with the European Green Deal, we have committed to step up our efforts. One of the key learning from past experiences is that basing our actions on a strict legality criterion is not sufficient. Much of the ongoing deforestation is legal in countries where it occurs, but it is nonetheless unacceptable from the perspective of protecting biodiversity and fighting climate change. So we need to work with science-based sustainability criteria that can be applied worldwide. Another key lesson we have learned is that if illegal timber is a driver of deforestation, the main challenge is agricultural expansion. So we also need to expand the scope of our actions to tackle other commodities such as meat, soy, palm oil, coffee, or cacao. And as you see, we are determined to take ambitious, concrete, and efficient steps to put our own house in order. So we have our share of responsibility in the global deforestation process, and we are committed to respond to it by addressing the environmental impacts of our own consumption of commodities and products.
Thank you, Commissioner, for sharing the EU perspective. Could you perhaps expand a little on the EU's proposals to minimise the risk of deforestation and forest degradation associated with products placed in the EU market, including new legislation? How important are international partnerships to help meet these objectives?
Thank you. Following the previous answer, we need to step up our action against deforestation with a very clear ambition to better protect biodiversity and fight climate change. In the European Green Deal and the EU Biodiversity Strategy, we have committed to present a legislative proposal to avoid the placing of products associated with deforestation or forest degradation on the EU market. As President von der Leyen's statement in the One Planet Summit shows, this is a top priority for us, and our proposal will be ready by the summer. Again, if we want to make a difference, we need to go beyond illegal logging. And this new legislative proposal will create the right incentives for partner countries to make the transition to sustainable agricultural production methods. The proposal will cover several commodities and products linked to deforestation. It will establish criteria for what the EU considers as deforestation-free and will lay the foundations of a robust system. We are still in the preparation phase, but our proposal will likely compromise different tools, including an enhanced mandatory due diligence obligation for market operators based on a definition of deforestation-free supply chains. But we are also looking at innovative approaches, such as the one used in the context of fighting against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. At the same time, we are developing specific tools to help partner countries adapt and reap the benefits of new EU rules, such as the forest partnerships. To summarize, we cannot do it alone. Producers and consumers also have a duty to act. And it is equally important that other consumer countries take responsibility too.
Thank you. It's great to hear about the EU's commitment to reducing deforestation and the importance of international partnerships there. So coming back to you, Minister Zeyer, what do you see as the biggest challenges to aligning the policy goals of 1, trade and economic development, and 2, protecting forests in relation to forest and agricultural commodity production? Can they really work together?
Colombia tiene un gran reto de compatibilizar la producción agropecuaria y la seguridad alimentaria con la sostenibilidad ambiental. En términos comerciales, los principales retos que enfrenta la producción agropecuaria colombiana en los mercados internacionales está relacionada con las regulaciones que se están generando a nivel internacional, especialmente en la Unión Europea, que restringen los mercados de algunos productos de exportación de países como Colombia. Por ejemplo, en África Occidental, en particular en Ghana y Costa de Marfil, se produce buena parte del cacao de exportación al mundo. Y los bosques de esta región han sido gravemente afectados por las plantaciones de cacao, estando hoy muy fragmentados. Por el contrario, nuestros cultivos de cacao se establecen en sistemas agroforestales, lo que incrementa las áreas boscosas en la zona andina y demás zonas productoras de cacao. El sudeste asiático, para mencionar otro ejemplo, concentra aproximadamente el 80% de la producción mundial de aceite de palma y son grandes exportadores, en particular a China, Europa e India, los cuales tienen implicaciones fuertes de deforestación para dar lugar a plantaciones de palma de aceite colombiana. Es el 4º productor mundial de aceite de palma, pero la huella de deforestación de la palma de aceite en Colombia ha sido baja o casi nula. Sin embargo, en los mercados internacionales nos aplican las mismas restricciones. Esto tenemos que cambiarlo. Otro reto importante está relacionado con la movilización de recursos de cooperación técnica y financiación para certificar productos libres de deforestación y sostenibles con el medio ambiente. Los costos y procesos de certificación de altos y complejos. Una forma de estimular a los productores, especialmente a los pequeños, es facilitando el acceso a certificaciones internacionales que les abren mercados de productos diferenciados.
Thank you, Minister Zeyer, for those reflections. Coming back to you, Minister Park, how do you see the role of international collaboration working to reduce our impact on forests through commodity trade in order to meet the Paris Agreement targets?
Under the Paris Agreement, Korea has submitted its updated NDC and officially announced its commitment to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Most countries include forest activities in their NDC. Due to deforestation, forest diseases, and wildfire, forests in many countries still emit carbon dioxide, non-functioning as a carbon sink. The ever-growing trade in agroforestry commodities also causes deforestation when it's not sustainably managed. According to the recent analysis of FAO, the trade and the production of cattle, soy, palm oil, etc. are found as the major drivers of deforestation. On this point, this dialogue holds significant implication in looking for practical solutions together.
Thank you, Minister Park. And you're hosting the World Forestry Congress next year. Very exciting. And this looks like it could provide a key opportunity to genuinely preserve, restore and value forests. What would you like to see as the main outcome of the Congress in relation to trade, economic development and forest and agricultural commodity production? What would you like to see as the main outcome of the Congress?
The biggest global forest gathering, the World Forestry Congress, is held every 6 years in cooperation with FAO. This event, originally scheduled this year in Korea, has been postponed to the next year due to the COVID-19. I am positive the COP26 presidency can bring forward feasible resolutions. for the global consensus on forest, agriculture, and commodity trade through the series of this dialogue. I also believe the WFC to be hosted in Korea next year will be a great arena to share policy trade and implication of the FACT dialogue with the whole world, thereby creating synergy with the COP26. The WFC has 6 sub-themes, and the first one is reversing deforestation. So this dialogue could be incorporated and discussed further as one of the key topics under this theme. Very much looking forward to meeting you all in Glasgow. Hope to see you again next year in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And we are all looking forward to the World Forestry Congress. And now, if I could turn back to Commissioner Sinkevičiūtė. In response to the COVID crisis, there was the risk that environmental issues would be pushed off the agenda. However, the reverse seems to be true in many countries, which I'm personally delighted about. So why do you think that is? And how can we lever public and consumer interest in environmental issues such as deforestation? And you're in very good company, because I asked this very question recently of Sir David Attenborough.
First of all, I think you are absolutely right. We managed to avert that risk and created a new momentum for sustainability. The COVID crisis exposed many shortcomings in the present system and confirmed the need to build healthier, fairer, and more resilient societies. The EU response was clear. The European Green Deal, which was built as a new growth strategy, also happens to be our best tool for a sustainable economic recovery. Trust me, we are committed to the principle of building back better. The fight against deforestation is a case in point. We see that public awareness is high and European citizens are demanding strong action. I'm very inspired and optimistic about people's growing realization that we have to change our ways. And the fact that people, especially our young, are performing their civic duties and making their voices heard. To illustrate this, the public consultation that we launched on our legislative initiative on deforestation gathered nearly 1.2 million contributions, making it the second most popular in the history of the EU. Citizens clearly want politicians to up their game in the fight against climate change and to do more to protect the environment. I think it is now our responsibility to deliver.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinkevičiūtė. I think everybody here is keen to keep environmental issues at the forefront of our discussions in this very crucial year. Minister Cooper, you've mentioned the importance of supporting smallholders in the cocoa industry in Liberia. So how is Liberia planning to enhance smallholder farming and production while protecting forests?
In Liberia, the cocoa sector, we call it the new rubber, is the new tree crop that is gaining in popularity amongst the farmers. In the cocoa sector, we have the vast majority, as with everything else, of our farmers. Probably 95 to 99% of our farmers are smallholder farmers. At the most, it will be medium-sized plantations by any definition. And so we see cocoa as well as rubber and oil palm as key contributors to our continued enhancement of our forest cover. We focus on those as cash crops, and the government has been putting in place a number of projects to support smallholder farmers to rehabilitate their cocoa farms, to replant, and new planting as well. And for the first time, the government we have in the Ministry of Agriculture have established a national seed garden for cocoa, so that we're able to access our cocoa seedlings here in country in a matter of 2 to 3 years. We just set this up last year. It needs to come to fruition, and then we will not be going abroad to get our cocoa seedlings. So in many ways, we're channeling a lot of resources towards our smallholder farmers and in the cocoa smallholder farmers in particular.
Thank you, Minister. It's good to hear about the important work Liberia is undertaking on this agenda. If I could ask you then for your final reflections on how international collaboration on traded agricultural commodities can help tackle deforestation. And in that context, what Liberia's ambition is for the important COP26 and this dialogue.
Liberia has a net reforestation rate. And so we would like to position ourselves on the part of the dialogue that's looking at us as one of the solutions to climate change, and an interesting solution in that we have a fragile economy. Part of that solution, of course, is in managing and monitoring the trade that we have of our timber products. The other part is doing other things that we can to continue our reforestation so that we have a higher net reforestation rate. Our national forest cover represents over 40% of the Upper Guinea forest, which is arguably the third lung of the world. We are part of the solution to climate change. And as one of the world's high forest cover countries, with less than 0.004% of global greenhouse gas emissions, our challenge is, how do we harness our unique endowment in natural resources to finance national development in a sustainable way?
Well, what a motivating point to end on. Thanks again, Minister Cooper, and thank you to all of the ministers and the Commissioner for their insights and participation. Now I'm delighted to introduce Liu Ning.
Thank you, Kay, for inviting me to this important dialogue. As we all know, our world is facing a series of environmental challenges, including land degradation, climate change, and biodiversity loss. Forest, agriculture, and commodity trade are directly linked with biodiversity utilization and support the livelihood of billions of people worldwide. Therefore, managing the supply chain in a sustainable way is crucial to both promoting nature resources governance and addressing global environmental crisis. More important, to achieving 2030 SDGs. As the incoming presidency of CBD COP15, China would like to collaborate with the UK by promoting synergies between CBD and the UNFCCC to address our challenges. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks so much for that contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, now for something a little different. We're delighted to be joined by the legendary Nile Rodgers, music producer, composer, and guitarist, to add his voice to ours.
Thanks, Julia. It's an honor to be with you. My music breaks down many barriers and gets people around the world moving, dancing, and celebrating. And I think some of my best hits over the years have been in collaboration with other artists. David Bowie, Diana Ross, Daft Punk, Duran Duran, Madonna, and many others. We can achieve great things when we work together, be creative, and blend different voices, cultures, and ideas as we do every day at Abbey Road. But this truth about working collaboratively, often across borders, isn't just true when it comes to artists. It's also the same mindset when we need to confront the biggest challenges facing our world today. I founded the We Are Family Foundation as a direct result of 9/11. The primary mission was to promote anti-biasness after rampant racist attacks against American Muslims or those who looked Muslim. About the same time as this 9/11 discord, a documentary with Nelson Mandela dancing to my song We Are Family was making the rounds on the film festival circuit. I got numerous calls from friends all over the world to re-record it. They thought that the song's unifying message would help jumpstart the healing process. We quickly learned that focusing on basic human needs and our common humanity was our way of pursuing lasting peace. And the best way to do that was through the efforts of youth who have already adopted similar missions, confronting the world's biggest challenges with passion, understanding, and often collaboration. Globally, we are a mosaic of cultures and colors. Thus, our call to action is to educate, organize, and bring communities together. Our global family is fragile. COVID-19 has shown us that, but we are also powerful when we use our collective actions, and we can choose to use that collective action for good. We are in a climate emergency right now, and this becomes more obvious with each passing year. Confronting deforestation is essential if we stand a chance of meeting the Paris Agreement climate targets and saving these unique ecosystems. We must all take urgent action to protect each other and the planet, which is our most valuable and precious resource. But we must act in a way which respects and includes all voices in this conversation, ensuring that these efforts strengthen the development of forest countries, communities, and farmers. If this COP26 dialogue creates genuine global collaboration, then we can turn the tide on forests lost and improve the livelihood of millions. Working together, across borders, bringing together different voices, we can do so much more. We're starting this collaboration today with some pretty exciting global talent working on this challenge together. I look forward to seeing what you guys do in the next 10 months. We are using our voices, all of us around the world, to call for action. We are watching and waiting to see if this collaboration will be a hit. Peace, and thank you so much.
Although the Forest, Agriculture and Commodity Trade Dialogue is government-to-government dialogue at its heart, there's no realistic way that it can truly tackle deforestation and promote sustainable global trade without the support and energy of business and civil society. So now we're going to join a panel discussion hosted by the Tropical Forest Alliance. The TFA is a multi-stakeholder partnership platform, which is part of the World Economic Forum. Last week, they hosted a virtual Davos conference, and climate change action once again was in the spotlight. So I'd like to invite Justin Adams, the Executive Director of the Tropical Forest Alliance, to chair the panel discussion. He's brought together an exciting group of leaders representing the indigenous peoples, private sector and commercial companies, including Fabiola Munoz, who's the former Agriculture and Environment Minister of Peru, and she's now the coordinator of the Peruvian Coalition of Sustainable Production. Justin, over to you.
So, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. My name is Justin Adams. I am the Executive Director of the Tropical Forest Alliance, and I'm delighted to be hosting a panel bringing stakeholders together from business, civil society, and from various regions around the world to see how we can contribute to this really important discussion about sustainable land use and commodity trade. The Tropical Forest Alliance is the leading public-private partnership, bringing more than 170 organizations together from around the world to see how we can end commodity-driven deforestation. And I'm both humbled and excited that we've been asked by the COP26 presidency to formally support this process. We hope to both inform the government dialogues and reinforce the need for ambitious and urgent action to transform our food systems and end deforestation, while also looking how we can showcase some of the leading examples of where we're already seeing transformative change in an effort to accelerate progress in the months leading up to Glasgow and beyond. I can also announce today that we are establishing a high-level task force to bring a set of stakeholder voices together as we really look to inform the government-to-government dialogues, as we heard from all of these ministers. How can we advise them moving forward? And in that regard, I'm delighted to introduce as a keynote speaker, Fabiola Munoz, and delighted she's agreed to co-chair this new task force with me over these critical months for the COP26 campaign. Fabiola is the coordinator of the Peruvian Coalition for Sustainable Production, doing extraordinarily important work on the ground in Peru, and has previously served as the Minister for Environment and the Minister for Agriculture. Fabiola, we're excited to hear from you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Gracias, Justin. Bueno, igualmente, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, donde estén en el mundo. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad. Y es que realmente estamos frente a una extraordinaria oportunidad. Tener la posibilidad de escucharnos, de compartir ideas, de ser capaces de dar nuestras perspectivas, balanceando la información, pero también teniendo la capacidad de ser realistas, incorporando el esfuerzo de productores, que es clave si queremos cambiar la forma de hacer las cosas, pero también la posibilidad de que los mercados funcionen con una lógica distinta. Que premiemos las buenas prácticas, aquellos que hacen las cosas bien, aquellos que piensan en una producción sostenible, que seamos capaces de incorporar a los pequeños y luchar juntos contra la deforestación, apostando por una agenda climáticamente inteligente. Tenemos hoy día una extraordinaria oportunidad con el grupo de trabajo y este esfuerzo de diálogo sin precedentes a nivel global que trata de generar la oportunidad de intercambiar perspectivas. Yo estoy en América del Sur, pero hay cosas que están sucediendo en diferentes partes del mundo. ¿Cómo enriquecer nuestras perspectivas? ¿Cómo intercambiar aprendizajes, lecciones aprendidas? ¿Cómo ser capaces de, en este contexto de la pandemia que enfrentamos, lograr hacer las cosas de forma diferente? Tenemos la capacidad, pero la única forma de hacerlo es trabajando juntos. Y esa es una de las cosas más importantes que tenemos en este momento mirando hacia la COP. Y también reconociendo el esfuerzo de Reino Unido por abrir este espacio para un diálogo franco, sincero, donde podamos realmente contribuir. Y aquí es importante el rol de las empresas, por supuesto, y de los países, ¿no? O sea, China juega un rol importantísimo, lo mismo que Estados Unidos, Europa, pero también de los productores. Y a nivel de los productores, tenemos que pensar desde cómo hacemos cambios en el sistema financiero, en el acceso que tenemos a oportunidades de mercado que premien las prácticas que buscan reducir las emisiones. Y eso significa atrevernos a hacer las cosas de forma diferente. Tomemos la oportunidad juntos. Muchas gracias.
Fabiola, thank you so much. That's an incredibly inspiring talk, and I think really reinforcing what is at the heart of this dialogue and the opportunity we have to listen to one another. And so I'm delighted that we now have a panel with some very diverse perspectives. And so I will go with no further ado to our first speaker, Pep George, the General Manager for Sustainability of Wilmar International, one of the leading palm oil producers and traders, who brings a really rich perspective. Pep.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll go really quick as I know I only have a few minutes. For me today and being here within COP26, I think the main message should be about collective and objective action. And I think this is really important because when you look at strides being made, for example, within the palm industry, if you want to look at it objectively, I think it's important to look at the numbers. And the numbers say this, that 50% of global production globally of palm oil is covered under a certification scheme, a sustainable independent certification scheme. That is a large number if we look at an overall industry. Other numbers that make really important points to take note is that from 2016 to 2019, there has been significant reduction of deforestation happening in the two main countries where palm oil is being produced. And that's in Indonesia, showing 51% overall reduction. And in Malaysia, showing about 30% overall reduction in deforestation. And the final number to put to you is that within the palm oil sector, over 75 to 80% of global volume represented within processors and traders have a commitment to no deforestation, no peat, and no exploitation. Now, pulling that all together, it would seem that the palm sector really is moving ahead in terms of what is expected of sustainability. Now, unfortunately, when we look at what governments are doing, it's not necessarily objective. And we look at, for example, the EU ban on palm oil biofuels, which kicks in 2023. Now, what that ban does is effectively it removes the incentivization of moving towards sustainability, because currently already all biofuels that are palm-based going into the EU is already required to be certified under a sustainability scheme. That's already a regulatory requirement under the EU. And so really, I think the point here is about it's not enough just talking about collective action, but I think really when we're making decisions at government level, trying to look at overall impact to climate change overall globally, we do need to look at numbers objectively and to work more collaboratively in that collective way. I think the other example I would give, if you look at the process that the EU went through with the FLEGT process covering timber, that was much more collaborative in that governments were being spoken to much more bilaterally, and discussions were being made about what was being done nationally. I think we lose a little bit of that in the conversation about removing deforestation and the impacts of that within the palm oil sector. Now, I would challenge, I think, the governments here, particularly those in Europe, to look at palm oil in the same lens, in a collective but also objective lens, so that we can then really move ahead with some of the impacts that are already on the ground.
Thank you, Pep. So I think talking about some of the progress we've seen, as well as some of the complexity and the importance of dialogue, and if we really want to unlock collective action. I want to turn now to Hindu Ibrahim, who's the president of the Association for Indigenous Women and Peoples of Chad, a wonderful champion for Indigenous peoples the world over, to bring, I think, probably a very different perspective of the importance of how we work with our lands globally. Hindu.
Thank you very much, Justin. And hi, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to be with you and see how we are starting the partnership and how we can work together in land use and sustainability. So us coming from indigenous communities, we always say land right is the most important for our survival. Because for us, the land, it is not only the commodity when we can build our economy, but the land, it is also our survival. It is our medicine. It is the way that we can live in harmony with the rest of the species of the nature, because as indigenous people said always, human beings are only one species of the nature. How about the rest? So that means it is very important to see how we can respect the forest, how we can respect our savannas, how we can respect the other species that living in harmony with us. And that means indigenous peoples developed for centuries living in harmony with the nature, and you can find the most diverse ecosystem in the earth can be found in our lands. And then peoples develop those knowledge since centuries to also protect our human health. As well as Fabiola said, we are in very critical moments, but we also can build a sustainable partnership among us. So let us build it in a positive way, using traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, the science, the policies that we can change, and the politician can take also the leadership. And together, we believe that we can really make our world again better. Then as the COP presidency, that setting the adaptation, the resilience, the land use in the middle of the discussions, I think that changing the trajectory of how we can come together between private, public, and indigenous communities to work together. So we are ready to work with everyone, but we want peoples to respect indigenous people rights, respect our land, and recognize our knowledge are valuable to also protect and restore sustainably our land management.
Thank you, Hindu. Incredibly passionate as always, and a great reminder that land rights is central to so much of this discussion, but also the incredibly important role that indigenous peoples can play in terms of bringing their knowledge into the discussion of how we're going to unlock solutions moving forward. Thank you so much for being with us. I now turn to Andre Guimarães from Brazil, the executive director of IPAM, a key scientific and research organization focused on the Brazilian Amazon, and has also until recently been the co-chair of an incredibly important coalition for climate, forest, and agriculture in Brazil, bringing many stakeholders together in the Brazilian context. So a really important perspective. Andre, we'd love to hear from you. How do we accelerate action?
Thank you, Justin, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very important moment on the global society, global human society. But I would like to share with you, Justin and friends, a dream that I have been having for 30 years, since I've graduated in agronomy here in Brasilia about 30 years ago. And this dream is very simple. I would like to see one day indigenous people, traditional communities, farmers, ranchers, everybody, side by side, fighting the same war against the deforestation of the Amazon. That's a dream I have. And why do I have this dream? I mean, Brazil is a country that is highly dependent upon land use. About 1/4 of our GDP is directly related to land use, agriculture, forestry, ranching. Those are activities in which Brazil is very competitive. But 90% of our agriculture depends upon rain, depends upon natural water cycles. So destroying the Amazon means destroying the Brazilian future. And destroying the Brazilian future means putting at risk global food security, being Brazil the supplier of food to about 1.2 billion people every day. So protecting the Amazon is something that we all have to be side by side fighting for. Deforestation in the Amazon is a bad business for people living in the Amazon. They need the forest. They engage with the forest. They depend upon the forest for their living and their livelihoods. Protecting the Amazon is crucial for Brazil because we need the water for agriculture, and it's fundamental to the world, both for food security and for stabilizing the climate. So protecting the Amazon requires engagement of the society, requires the consumption and the good use of the information that we have available today. Today, we know that we need the Amazon to irrigate the Brazilian agriculture. We didn't know that clearly 10, 15 years ago. So why don't we work together? That's the question I would like to leave for us to think about. Thank you.
That's a wonderful dream, Andre, and again, an incredibly powerful call to action for us to work together to some shared future and the interdependence of livelihoods, particularly agriculture, but livelihoods for the whole world and our interconnection with the forest. So thank you for bringing that very, very important perspective. So finally, I turn to Chris McGrath, who's the Vice President and Chief of Global Impact and Sustainability for Mondelez International, and is also the co-chair of the relatively recently formed Forest Positive Coalition of the Consumer Goods Forum, bringing many of the leading consumer goods companies of the world together to see how they can be contributing to this fight against deforestation. Chris, over to you.
Thanks so much, Justin, and it's an honor to be on this panel with all of you and hear these important perspectives. So as you mentioned, at Mondelez, my role is leading overall sustainability. And with the way that we buy our palm oil, we tried some pretty innovative approaches starting in 2014, where we made sustainability part of the buying relationship and part of our mainstream contracts in terms of ensuring that our suppliers had deforestation-free practices, not only when what they supplied to us, but across their businesses. And now if we look at what we're doing in Forest Positive, it is an industry coalition of action. We have 18 companies around the table working together, and I think that's a key piece. We're working together and taking action. This isn't just a sustainability effort off to the side. It's about transforming the way we do business to promote forest positive practices. The second thing that we're working on is integrated landscape use. So just looking around, this panel, it's bringing those different perspectives around the table and saying not just what's going on in the little patch where we source our one particular commodity from, but taking a landscape view and saying, what is it that we need to do to promote a long-term forest positive landscape? Because again, we think that that's the essential way to promote long-term growth for our businesses, for the world, and to combat climate change. What we need, I would say, is, this is a terrific environment, starting with the collective action here, but we need policies that will bring more people around the table and hold everybody accountable. We need policies in the producing countries. We need policies in the consuming countries that really incent everyone to act and make it a mandatory, not an optional piece. And we need investment. We are looking at significant investment to be able to restore and protect our forests as an essential way to combat climate change and to promote, healthy growth for all of us. So that's something that I think, we're looking at as a coalition. But again, we need more folks working together to make that happen.
Chris, thank you so much again, pointing to the need of collective action. I want to turn back to all of the panelists now, just for the two last questions to squeeze in. So if you could be succinct, the two questions, one thing that is holding us back and one thing that you're excited about. And Pep, I'll turn to you first.
I think holding us back may be objectivity. So not enough for being collective, but you got to be collective and objective, I think, in some of that decision making. What I'm excited about is how industry is more and more moving into the space of sustainability and recognizing that need for collaboration, working with communities as well as smallholders across the board. So I think there is much more reception within industry to move this way. And it's becoming, I think what we like to say, sustainability is becoming now the new business norm.
Thank you. Andre, I'm going to turn to you next.
I think we need, Justin, to use the information that we have today. We like to say that we are living the era of information, and I believe that's true. But we are still not consuming correctly that information that is available. I think the public policies, they need to be redone or rethink at some extent. And information, scientific information that is available today, and as I mentioned before, wasn't available 5, 10, 15 years ago, has to be taken into account. Today, we know that destroying the oceans is a bad business. Today, we know that polluting rivers harms the supply of water for people. Today, we know that deforestation of tropical forests may harm us as a human group globally. So we know that. We need to incorporate that know-how, that knowledge into the public policies that will drive us to the future. That, I believe, is the key challenge for the future generations to come.
Thank you, Andre. Chris, to you.
Yeah, I think what's holding us back is it's the from to. We know, as Andre just said, what's not working, and what are the innovative solutions that we're able to go to that are going to be a different way of developing growing the commodities that we need to feed the world, to be able to provide the livelihoods for the folks who grow those, but in a way that also promotes forest positive environments. And I don't know that we have those solutions yet of what that new way of doing business looks like. As I mentioned, we have our theory of change. Each of us here, we're trying different things, but I think a more mainstream solution is what we have to get to of how the new way business will get done. What I'm super excited about is that we're moving much more, and you hear it over and over, to collective action. And so I think what we need to see now is more folks around the table really working together on how do we get to those innovative solutions. And building on what Pep said, that I think some of that objectivity is a willing to listen to and recognize that no one can solve this on their own, and we need each other.
Thank you, Chris. Fabiola, I'm going to ask you.
Realmente hemos tenido la posibilidad de escuchar y de inspirarnos, ¿no? La posibilidad de trabajar juntos. Miren desde dónde estamos hablando, desde las perspectivas de los productores, de los empresarios, de los pueblos indígenas, desde todos. Entonces, ¿por qué no? ¿Por qué no trabajar juntos? ¿Por qué no compartir ideas? ¿Por qué no usar la información, como dice André? ¿Por qué no tomar mejores decisiones? Decisiones climáticamente inteligentes. Y eso es algo que creo que hay que ser realistas y objetivos, que es parte de lo que nos han comentado. Y desde el otro lado, bueno, yo solo veo oportunidades para sumar, oportunidades para decir, yo tengo esta perspectiva, tú tienes esta otra, y podemos trabajar colaborativamente. Tenemos que construir una relación donde la agricultura no compita con los bosques, donde la agricultura se complemente con los bosques, donde la biodiversidad sea parte de lo que valoramos, donde la seguridad alimentaria esté garantizada, y donde seamos capaces de construir ese sueño de André y esa perspectiva de respeto a los derechos de hindú, donde trabajamos colaborativamente, como menciona Christine, y donde hoy día la empresa está apostando por un cambio súper importante, como menciona Perpetua.
Thank you so much, Fabiola. Lastly, Hindu.
I think what's holding us back, it is the matter of urgencies that we do not see. We do not have time at all. We know that we have 10 years to reduce emissions, to end deforestation, to restore the ecosystem, to invest in land, but in a positive way, to keep what we have, and to respect indigenous peoples and put them in the middle of the discussions. And that is also my excitement, because there are a lot of initiatives that are going on, and the initiative like this one, where we are all talking about and wanted to launch it, where the initiative include everyone and wanted everyone to be in the tables, including indigenous peoples, women, including local communities, peoples from the south and the north, building in a concrete action and solutions. And that gives me a lot of excitement and give me more energy to, again, come in partnership with all of you around the tables and with all the audience to be together and act for our planet and peoples.
Wonderful. Well, I can add little to all of that, but the commonality that we've heard from all the speakers is we have the knowledge, we have the opportunities, we need to listen to each other, and we need to work together with a real sense of urgency, knowing the task in hand. And this COP process, the COP26 process, really gives us a wonderful chance to bring all of our voices together to support governments with more ambition. But you're hearing from business, you're hearing from indigenous people, you're hearing from civil society. We are ready to step up and support action this year and for this critical decade ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin, for that exciting discussion. Rich and honest dialogue there. Plenty of talk about the importance of valuing biodiversity. And interestingly, Andre Guimarães from Brazil saying we've learned so much in just 10 years that we need to relook at public policies and incorporate that knowledge. It's exciting to launch the multi-stakeholder task force, which will play such an important part of the FACT dialogue. Now we're going to take a look at some positive action on the ground, which is happening right now in Ghana. Here's a lovely film from Partnership for Forests.
While people are staying at home to safeguard their health and safety, cocoa farmers in Ghana are continuing their work to ensure a steady flow of income for the country. Cocoa farming is the backbone of Ghana's economy. Cocoa accounts for roughly 57% of all agricultural exports and supports the livelihood of some 2.5 million rural farmers and their dependents.
Cocoa for mfie eduasansiani. Mfie dum ko mfie du a edi kan no na meti cocoa pa. Ebra cocoa no eso ebetie no eye be se mfie edu ebe ya na ehu se enema bi aba na de aba no ye ewiem nsachira ya aba no abeka cocoa no se bra ese ensuo eto no ensuo no entumi ento.
In recent years, Ghana's forests have come under severe threat from agricultural expansion, accounting for nearly 140,000 hectares of high forest zone loss annually. To reverse this trend and prevent further forest degradation, actors from across the cocoa value chain are collaborating on a series of sustainability initiatives under the Cocoa and Forest Initiative.
Tuton supports the idea of landscape approach. We are open, working closely with government to be able to engage with our competitors so that our efforts can complement each other and we're able to synergize our impacts on ground.
Organizations need to come together and work together. Joint action is actually the way to go. Organizations, individual organizations in the past have attempted addressing deforestation and landscape governance issues individually, and clearly that's not practical.
The input of the Forestry Commission and Ghana's Cocoa Board as partners continues to strengthen and reinforce the existing regulatory framework to ensure a sustainable cocoa supply chain. Notable initiatives include the National Cocoa Management System aimed at promoting full traceability in the cocoa sector and the living income differential to alleviate cocoa farmers' poverty. The Ghana Cocoa Forest RED Plus program is putting in place participatory governance and monitoring systems to ensure the country's resilience to climate change while promoting sustainable production of commodities.
If you commit to protect a hectare of a forest and 10 years down the line you haven't, there should be some sanctions along those 10 years. There should also be some indicators that tell us your performance, whether you are performing or you are not performing, and what is preventing you from performing. And at the scale of RED Plus, it is not solely the role of government as a regulator. The governance board is in place. The governance board signs an agreement with government to also ensure that their communities and their local actors stick to their side of the bargain. So far, the feedback we are getting is that there is a lot of inclusiveness. People feel that the process is transparent. Not just that they feel, they also see that the process is transparent. They contribute to decision-making actions, and they also know the benefits that are coming in and how these benefits are going to be shared.
To support climate-smart cocoa and forest protection, 35 global cocoa and chocolate companies, including the government of Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, signed the CFI Joint Declaration in 2017 for deforestation-free cocoa. Individual and collective efforts are underway in Ghana to support climate-smart cocoa production, resilient livelihoods, and forest landscapes.
Rainforest Alliance, NFA Olam Partnership P4F program, Cocoa Board Ewum. Send America can Ulam Fonso Eka our modern titi smart agriculture no ya training lead farmers are omunso de enchire no eba e formal kwa for say ne be ya ye be hu bra ese ye pruning aboa ama afi no dodo no a yemfuo no cocoa no a ensesan abam ama yetimi ate cocoa no dodo no a P4F project no aboa ya atete yen ensanu nyuma ana niam ye betimi de aboa yenku aye no se ne be ya sempo cocoa no esa ye betumi adada ye ho e wo sa adwumadi enum na edi sika abre enam sa antete hu de amayenti no na ehu nhia se ye be tre afuo no mu bebire ansa na enya cocoa no dodo a be ma yakọ akọbọ awura forest num na yakọ akọdọ enti entete enum de amayen no aboa yen na akuafo no so yate ase a ye de adi dwuma.
How fantastic to see some great work already happening and to see the impact that creating sustainable commodities can have on local producers and forests. Now, it's a well-used cliche that our future is in the hands of our young people, but it also happens to be true. So now let's hear from an important voice. Lana Vidgenant is the Brazil-US Youth Ambassador for Real Food Systems.
My name is Lana Weigena. I am a youth activist and Real Food Systems youth ambassador who is from both a consumer and a producer country. As we launch this vitally important dialogue, I offer you the following inputs from the youth community. First, if we are to truly protect the livelihoods of agricultural workers, we must achieve a just transition to ensure these workers are not left behind in changing land use. We must also shift from extractive to regenerative relationships to the planet and to each other. We must remember that the agricultural practices in producer countries are influenced by the demands of consumer countries, and we must rethink development from ideas of infinite growth to understandings of finite resources and planetary boundaries. We must acknowledge and protect the treaties and land rights of indigenous peoples who are preservers of biodiversity and have been losing their homes to deforestation. We must ensure that civil society plays a role as an implementing partner in government collaborative actions, as this promotes sustainability and local knowledge. And we must also ensure that the livestock sector is transformed away from industrial animal agriculture, which promotes unhealthy diets, is harmful to animals, and is central in deforestation. Above all, you must come together for global collective action and ensure that this is not just another UN event that goes nowhere. Instead, imagine what it would look like for this to be an extremely successful dialogue, one that saves forests, conserves biodiversity, combats climate change, and protects the livelihoods of millions of producers. What would that look like in terms of your actions, your commitments? Make that happen. Youth are counting on you.
Thank you so much, Lana, for those inspiring words. So many young people around the world have a very passionate voice calling for change around the globe, and particular in calling for international collaboration to tackle the climate emergency and to restore nature. As well as passionate youth voices campaigning for change like Lana, we've also got a lot of passionate young leaders in the COP26 team who are the driving force behind the FACT dialogue. So thank you to everybody. We're coming to the end of today's launch, and I want to thank all of our speakers today for really highlighting how important our forests are, and to all of you around the world who've joined us as well. I look forward to seeing the forest, agriculture and commodity trade dialogue develop and grow this year. So do campaign alongside us and help us make transformative change. This next film is a bit of a special treat. Who better to help us close our show than the planetary treasure, who is Sir David Attenborough, who has an uplifting message now about how this year, 2021, can be the year that we start to turn the tide on restoring nature.
Hello, I'm David Attenborough. I'm speaking to you from my home because, like many of you, I've spent much of the last year indoors, away from friends, family, and access to the natural world. It's been a challenging few months for many of us, but the reaction to these extraordinary times has proved that when we work together, there is no limit to what we can accomplish. Today, we are experiencing environmental change as never before. And the need to take action has never been more urgent. This year, the world will gather in Glasgow for the United Nations Climate Change Conference. It's a crucial moment in our history. This could be a year for positive change, for ourselves, for our planet, and for the wonderful creatures with which we share it. A year the world could remember proudly and say, we made a difference. Let's think about what each of us could do. What positive changes could we make in our own lives? So here's to a brighter year ahead. Let's make 2021 a happy year for all the inhabitants of our perfect planet.
As ever, such inspiring words from Sir David Attenborough there. Who doesn't listen to what this remarkable man has to say? Nature and biodiversity have the power to heal, to cool our warming planet, to clean our air, and to keep everything in balance. It's our duty to protect it for our children and our children's children, and also to find a way at this critical junction of moving forward, working together. We need each other, and together we need to reduce emissions, restore the ecosystems, and end deforestation. Land use, indigenous populations' knowledge, agriculture that doesn't compete with forests. We must consider and act on all of these things now. This year, we have the chance to do something truly transformational. COP26 is only 10 months away. So we need to seize this moment, reset the balance, and transition to a sustainable future.
The movement towards a forest-positive future is gaining momentum. Attitudes and behaviors are changing consumer demands, and forward-thinking producers and suppliers are taking heed and collective action by implementing sustainability processes and standards. It will take all of us, producers, supply chain companies, local and national governments, finance institutions, civil society and NGOs, indigenous people and communities, foresters and farmers, to join in this dialogue to see the results. Research has now proven that trees themselves collaborate. They communicate, share resources, and even forge alliances, becoming a robust force of collective action. We need you to become a part of the solution. Join in the conversations, and collective action that will lead to real, transformative change.